And here we go. Welcome. We're welcome again to visit with us here on Between Two Teachers. I'm Madeline Cronenberg.
And I'm Consuelo Lara, and welcome on this Friday, October 23rd episode.
Indeed, and we are still in pandemic times here. And we are in the sacred land of the Chochenyo Karkin Ohlone people. And I'm so happy to say that the West Contra Costa Unified School District is apparently, starting at the next meeting, also going to recognize the sacred land of the Chochenyo Karkin Ohlone people. I hope they include all of them, but that did come up at their last school board meeting. And so hopefully we can grow this kind of acknowledgement throughout our community and our different agencies. I might bring this to the county. I may be on a county board soon and they'll be surprised, but I think we should do it. And then it's good that the board is going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a really important thing to do. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening internationally, because there actually are international stories, education stories. And the big story is schools that are closed, countries that are closing down their schools who had reopened them because of the resurgence of coronavirus cases. And as of today, the two that have just immediately closed from schools that were completely open were the Czech Republic in Prague, everybody's gone home, and Northern Ireland. Both of them are totally closed. In addition, nationally, in Boston, the schools had reopened. They've closed because cases have gone back up in Boston. And this is all things that we've been told, that as the weather gets colder and people are going indoors, or people get mask fatigue and virus fatigue and they're not behaving, they're not following the protocols they did before, the consequence is the virus is spreading. And even though there are obviously more treatments for the virus now, you don't want the virus, you don't want to get it, and you don't want to put yourself in a position where your children are spreading it to their families and to your staff.
Well, I have a question. Do we know if when they went back like fully, or did they phase it in? Because it sounds like they.
I think they wanted to go back fully. Some of them went back fully, but I think Boston phased it. Although they were really talking about going back, because just like in New York, they were down to below 1%.
I remember, yes, and
so you can, you believe you can go back.
Yeah,
and this is the thing. It's a very scary procedure here. And, people have to really you have to respect the virus.
That's right.
That's what it comes down to.
Keep our eyes on that, on the other people that are going in. Yeah.
Right. That's the whole thing. So in California, we haven't gone in, although actually some places have. There are a few places that have thought about it. The school that I talked about in Marin that went back in had to close because they got cases. Okay. So then you go in and you're closed for 2 weeks. You go through this whole thing where you're in and then you're out for 2 weeks, which is really, I think, more upsetting for kids than not having the stability of staying home. And I think that's why more and more places are having the stability of staying home, because it's just it's really difficult to not know. I know, and for teachers in terms of how you're going to.
Yes, absolutely.
1 minute you're doing it one way and the next minute you're doing it another way.
It's too much.
It is. It's a lot. So there's but there are different. You can look through California. There are different counties. There are counties with very, very low rates that are looking at opening up, and some of them are opening up. Some of them are very tiny schools in very rural communities, because California is a big place.
Up in the hills.
And so it may well be that you can distance learning there without any problem. And honestly, many of our private schools, which are smaller to begin with,
Yeah.
had the money to invest and to make the to make the physical changes in their buildings and put up plexiglass barriers, and they've
Yep.
gone back.
Yep.
They've gone back.
Sure.
So there's a really broad range of how things are operating for our kids, but it's important to know that there are places that are closing. The other thing that's happening is that there are people who are organizing themselves in many different ways around the way schools are opening, including suing the school districts. And in Los Angeles, there are two. There's a lawsuit now that's been brought by 9 parents, but these 9 parents are low-income minority parents who are members of 2 groups of parent leaders who've been trained by and supported by 2 groups called, one of them is called Innovate Schools, and the other one is Parent Revolution. And these groups are groups that have created parent leadership in many ways. To one group did it to create the parent trigger law. They're responsible for that, and that's a law that allows parents to gather together, and if you have a certain percentage of parents in a school, it triggers that school to become a charter school.
Right.
And that's Parent Revolution. They are responsible for that. And Innovate California Innovate Schools has a long list of accomplishments, including the one application, so that if you want to get into a charter school in LA, the process is much easier than it had been before. They've streamlined the process. So it's very clear where these organizations are aligned, right? And this lawsuit, I mean, there are many ways to improve how children are going to come back. And I'm just not convinced suing a school district is one of them. I think that it elevates your problems, and it creates more problems, and more money goes to law firms to defend it. And you wind up going into court incredibly divided, where you have the reason you're not opened is because you want to protect your people. That's why you're not opening. That's the whole reason you're not opening. You don't have the resources to protect people. We don't have what some of these other schools have. We don't have testing. Right. I mean, and we're not even talking about that. In San Diego, they're talking about how they're going to test their teachers every day. In some of these universities, they test the students every day.
Yeah.
We're not testing anybody.
Nope.
So, I mean, there is no uniform, universal system here to help. And that's not the fault of the teachers, that they don't have any testing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, these are all things to watch. This
Okay.
is what is happening now. And in West Contra Costa, we've had a busy week. One thing was that we're going to acknowledge the Chochenyo, Kark, and Ohlone people, right?
Yeah, we have our student trustee who brought that forward, and that was going to be my shout out to Stephanie Garcia Avila, and she was the one, she did that presentation on Indigenous people, and it just reminds me of our need for ethnic studies. It's really, really important. Native American studies, oh my goodness, we just need to really put that in place. And right now we're in the middle of the elections, of course, and one of the things that happened, I always like to look at the donations that are made. I find it really interesting. And of course, Stephen Chamberlain is on there all the time. He's got thousands and thousands of dollars to all of our schools. In addition, he also hundreds of thousands of dollars to our candidates for school board. So, I mean, an obscene, exorbitant amount of money that he pays to basically buy seats on the school board, I think. And so one of the things when you try to tell people that, and some people think, oh, so what? I guess if you're the benefactor of the money, you think it's a good thing. But it really creates an unequal plane for
Mhm.
candidates, and it's not fair. It's not right. And so I'm trying to put this into a political context. So I go way back to, I have a BA was ethnic studies, and I got, multicultural education. I always wanted to look at and understand racism and how it works. So I remember a book called The Colonizer and the Colonized by Albert Mimi. And the question I always had was, how does a small group of, let's say, Europeans come to a continent, say like the United States, where there's Native Americans, or in India, or in Africa, and they conquer it and they colonize it? How does that small group of people get to do that? So I learned that this is how they do it. They find the leaders in the colonized group that they want to, conquer. They find those leaders, and maybe they kill some of them, but whatever they do, they bring them in, they convert them, they, what's that word you use, the evangelize
Evangelize.
them, and they convert them into their thinking, their agenda, their philosophy. That, and they can also tell them, you're different, you're a little bit different than the rest of them, and here's what we think would be better for you, and people will do better. And so they just convert them into their agenda, their colonizer agenda. And they send them out like warriors. Okay, now you have position, you have status above the rest, and here's what we want you to do. And they just send them out, and the colonizer just sits back, and maybe they tell them, bring us the resources, natural resources, whatever it is, that's labor, that's going to benefit the colonizer, and they get the warriors to do all their dirty work. And so that is the method. And so when I look at what are all the other strategies that the colonizer uses, creating a narrative, for instance, about the other colonized. Oh, what they're doing is working, what they're doing is wrong. And no, well, and for countries, like taking away their culture, taking away language, those kinds of strategies. But so, and then the other thing that happens is you created this divide and conquer. So now you have the colonized fighting amongst themselves for the crumbs that the colonizer has left. So the colonizer has a specific thing in mind, and that is to make money, to profit, to, it benefits them and only them,
Right.
really. And their goal really is to exploit the colonized for their resources and so what I can transfer that over when I'm looking at Contra Costa Unified School District and charter school system industry corporations that come in. So the colonizer in this instance for our area would be, in my mind, West Contra Costa Kids Can Go Public School Associates, and that would be all funded by Stephen Chamberlain. So that's his tools. Those are the tools he learned, and Ronald Nahas as well. And so that's what I consider that's happening here. It's colonization. We are being colonized. And the reason is that the mentality of the colonized is school districts are big business. And what we need to do is convert this into privatizing the resources so that we could continue to make money. And that's mentality. It doesn't have to do with social service or with growing children and, young minds. It doesn't have anything to do with that. But they can use that language. They can use that jargon. They can use social justice jargon. Call themselves, we're the parent revolution. Let's use the jargon. In fact, you could even infiltrate into those organizations.
Right. And you can become a benefactor of those organizations. So then those organizations look to align with you.
Yes. And you could say, oh, well, you should be thanking them. They're so generous. and they're so benevolent. And what they give you is pennies, crumbs, compared to the millions or billions they will eventually make from the situation, from colonizing. So like I said, I see that happening. That's the only context that I can understand the charter school influence on our communities, because they definitely have divided and conquered our
There's no
communities.
question about that.
So
You're right.
that's kind of where we are. When I try to tell people to understand this, I get this, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. But maybe that's part of the narrative also. You got the failing district, and anything, if you don't believe that, then you're just, you have a conspiracy theory. If you think the charter people are out to destroy the district, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. So that's part of the narrative as well, to discredit discredit you from thinking critically. Think critically about what's happening around you. And I don't know. I remember a friend of ours who said, people don't want to be told they've been duped. So that's kind of hard. It's kind of hard for people to accept it. And I understand that. But
It's true.
I mean, I want to understand what I'm seeing, and I need to share that. I'm not going to keep it to myself, that this is what I see happening. And then I know who to support and who not to support,
Right.
who to what do I have to fight against, and to really understand the players and their intent and their motivation. You have to understand that.
And that's why it is wonderful that we have at least the opportunity to see the transparency of, at least in this political time, where in California, we have at the bottom of a piece of paper that we receive, or even a Facebook ad, the ability to see who paid for that ad.
Yes, it's all right there.
It's right there.
Billboard.
And if it's not somebody if it doesn't say the California Teachers Association or the Nurses Association or some group of people that if it's just a name there, go to your little Google machine and look it up, because you can learn some things there, and you can don't just assume that it's information you need to know.
And then I guess the bottom line is, like, it's a matter of values as well, because maybe you say, okay, I know he makes millions of dollars off of our school through his charter schools, Aspire and Summit, and he is a real estate person, and he's pocketing that money and making. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it. Own it. He's going to fund my, campaign. I want that. I know his agenda, but don't try to pretend that this is somehow some kind of great, philanthropist, and he's, somehow he loves Black and brown poor children, and he's giving up so much for them. Nah, that's not happening. That's not what happens. What's happening here. No. He's benefiting.
And it's true throughout the country. I mean, certainly in California, the other places that it's happening to a great extent. Go, for example, is very active in Oakland right now. And so once again, huge amounts of money are going into the Oakland school board race, as they are into the Los Angeles school board race.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And it's exactly the same group of people with the same intent, the identical intent.
Identical. And really, that's what Madeline and I look closely at Los Angeles. We look closely at Oakland. And that's how we came up with 2 years ago that we had to do that moratorium.
Right.
And now, that was where that came from. We said, we don't, how do we prevent this? How do we prevent this, or slow it down, or
exactly
expose it, And I think that's where we are right now. We have to expose all of this inequity and colonization techniques.
It has to continue to come out, and that's all. We just have to continue to call it out. Right. Yeah. And to make the distinction. So if there is a distinction for somebody, then we can make the distinction. But in this case, it's very clear. There doesn't need to be any distinction made. And the charter school management organizations, basically are businesses that make money from the very limited amount of money that we have in California to educate our children. And they peel it off for themselves. And we've had to pass laws to keep them from bankrupting districts. That's why 1505 was so important, right? Without 1505, it was perfectly okay for all of us to go bankrupt.
Yeah,
Without-
yeah. Too bad. Yeah, that was
Yeah, too bad. You
your-
don't have to do a job. It doesn't matter. we're
Then
not
the
gonna do
narrative
anything.
is, oh, you mismanaged your funds. That's another. There's this whole, script. There's a
Yep.
script, so you know
Yep,
exactly.
yep.
And you know what? I have enough integrity. I will never tell a lie up here about these facts, these numbers, this money. I'm telling what I
Look,
it's
that's
public
why we
knowledge.
got in the public interest. Remember when in the public interest came in and we finally got them to do West Contra Costa and say this is $27.9 million a year is redirected out of the school district to the charter community.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess the difference is I'm outraged about it. I
Yes.
don't like it. I'm going to fight it. And one of the ways I start with exposing it, and we're going to do the best we can to do that, especially
Yeah.
now during this campaign season, for sure.
Because we're going to see how their investment in these candidates and this it all pays off. So it's all part of this, all part of the political narrative of the next 11 days, right?
Oh my God. Yes.
Over.
So that's my little colonization
that's it.
101. There'll
For
be more
today.
of it.
I wanted to give an update on something I talked about last week. Remember I mentioned Lowell High School in San Francisco?
Yes.
Yes. So they had their vote. And in fact, Lowell High School is going to, the incoming class will be chosen by lottery. No grades.
Right.
Totally different, which is the first time
Yes.
this has ever happened.
Yeah.
Right?
So
this is,
it's to achieve diversity, right?
well,
Or-
no, it's the big reason is they don't have any grades. This would not have come up had the tests been there, but the tests weren't there because last year we weren't able to take the final tests, right? Because of COVID.
Yep.
So the consequence of them not having the tests was they have to abandon the test. I mean, there were other choices, but the choice they made was to abandon the tests. And now in San Francisco, the children all do, all of the high schools in San Francisco are available for anybody to apply to, right? That's just how they do it. So they do an all district app and you can apply to whichever ones you want. And now for the first time, Lowell is one of the ones you can apply to. And if more people put it on their list as number one, which they're all going to do, right? Then they're just going to say, now, since more applied than we have spaces for, now we're going to do a lottery.
Okay. All right.
That's a big change in San Francisco. And we'll see if they continue that after. But anyway, that's what they're doing. And the other thing that happened was London Breed, the mayor, came out and she really wants the schools to open, which of course everybody wants our schools to open. And she and she, as a city, they've given them $15 million and they've opened 30 centers for community hubs, so that they're doing a lot of work with the school district. Because the thing about San Francisco, it's a city and county, and there's one city and one county, so there's a real collaboration, right?
That's right.
She did a press release saying that she didn't want them to waste any time. She wants them to just focus on that. And right now they're looking at renaming some of their schools because they're named for people who are colonizers. They're named for people who they no longer want to have names on their schools. But that takes time and effort to go through the whole renaming process and how many schools are there and how are you going to rename them? London Breed said, I don't want you to do that. This is not that I don't care. I want you to only focus on reopening your schools. You don't have time. Whatever energy you're spending on that, you should spend on reopening your schools. And that's that. Which is a really interesting position for her to take, I thought. But she did. So she's very firmly taken that position.
And I wonder how the labor unions are, teachers unions and everybody are responding to that also.
I don't know. Right. And in San Francisco, they are further along in terms of the the color signals, right? Where they're able to open up much more because the number of cases in San Francisco is
Oh,
very low,
okay, okay.
right? And so they know that. And if they could do that, then some of their businesses could open because they've lost population. They've lost, I mean, all of their downtown businesses are closed. Their hotels are closed. I mean, they have a huge, they're taking a big hit. And I
Yeah,
think she
yeah.
really wants people to be able to go back to work.
And well,
And
I think their big industry is tourists, right? The
it
tourist
is.
industry.
It
So,
is. So it's not going to help them. They need everybody else to be able to go back to work so that the tourists can come back. And also for them, the other big, I saw another Bay Area Council did a forum yesterday that I was watching, and the rate of unemployment in San Francisco is incredibly high. And it's one of the highest in the nation because it's right there with Hawaii and Las Vegas. And it's the international tourists, but it's also very much the business conference people.
oh yes, oh yes,
That's a
true.
huge industry, and that is happening on Zoom,
Gone. Yeah.
right? That is
Yeah.
gone. And so what that's going to look like, how that's going to come back is another big question. But for her as the mayor, that's what, she's very focused on the school district not spending any time on anything except reopening.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
So that
Okay.
was just, yeah, I mean, I can't imagine anyway. I was just very surprised by that.
Yeah, that is surprising considering what you just said about
Yeah.
the other places. God.
Right. So
Okay.
there you go. I left the for take action. We still have the same. The Cal RTA, the retired teachers, continue to say we still haven't got our Social Security protection in there for fairness, and so that continue. I'm just going to leave this on here till somebody passes this and we get it, because it continues to be the battle. And then I have two shout outs, and one of them is to the office. Actually, it's one, but it's two parts. To the Office of African American Student Achievement, to Mr. McGee, and all of his incredible good work, and the very strong presentation that was given the other night by them, where they're talking about many things they're doing and on every possible level. I'm so excited and proud of everything he's doing. And in addition to that, there's the webinar series that they're putting in, and one of them was grading for equity, right? That I know you got to see. Well, one thing I do when I hear of a webinar, I hear somebody doing it. Generally speaking, they've already done it, and somebody's got it on YouTube. So even if that has been my general rule of thumb, and Mr. Feldman, who apparently did a webinar on grading for equity, has done many a speech on grading for equity. This is not the first time he's done this.
Yeah.
So if you want to see it, the Corwin people have it online, and I put a link to it in here because and it is really interesting. And it just shows that we are looking at every possibility to train our team in understanding equity and all of its very many dimensions, and how it impacts everything, And so that's my shout out. Now you have a shout out, right?
Yeah, I wanted to shout out to Stephanie Garcia Avila. She did that presentation on Indigenous people, and it was really excellent. And she mentioned the thing that we say every day at the beginning. She had it in there, and I said, oh my goodness. And she recommended the opening that we pay and we honor those groups as well. So
it's a growing thing in Contra Costa, right?
Yeah, and you told me there were other organizations that are doing it now as a matter.
Right. Right. The PTA does it, and the League of Women Voters did it with their annual conference. Right.
And if we had ethnic studies, Native American studies, children could learn why it's important. They need to understand, who was here first. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It makes it really does make it, like these children behind us needed to know that. And They
Sure.
didn't. I wonder how
Yeah.
many of them survived. There they all are, sitting there.
I know. I
Okay,
know.
well, we don't have any chuckles this week because we didn't check in with our Chuckle King. So next week we'll have to
Yeah.
get one from Carlos.
Yeah.
So
We'll do next time.
yes, we'll double down next week.
Okay.
So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. Be
Bye-bye.
safe, everybody.
That's right.